So listen to this. What we have seen at this World Cup is unprecedented. Not the scandals, we have certainly seen plenty of those, but the reaction from the fans. We went into a final where it generally felt like the whole world wanted to see Argentina fail. And not only did everyone get what they wished for, they had it delivered to them in the most poetic way imaginable. A public beatdown that not only proved Argentina had no right to be in a World Cup final, but was so humiliating that the Argentinians simply could not stop themselves from showing their true colors. Only 5 seconds after the final whistle was heard, without any provocation, Nahuel Molina punched Rodri. And even worse, after Rodri looked back seemingly more confused than anything else, Molina squared up to him no matter what, to which his teammates, instead of trying to calm things down, proceeded to further disgrace themselves with Paredes coming in flying, pushing Eric Garcia by the throat, kicking him onto the ground, and then punching him the second he got back up, sparking up an actual brawl as he dragged Gavi around like a ragdoll. Yet, even after all of that, not only did Otamendi still get in Rodri's face complaining that the Spanish had influenced the referees against him, but as the time to lift the trophy arrived, the whole Argentinian squad turned their backs in protest. However, I must say, I do understand the Argentinians. They just wanted to see the rules be applied consistently. After all, why would Enzo Fernandez get sent off now when he and his teammates have gotten away with fouls like that the entire tournament? And I mean the entire tournament. First match against Algeria, Messi steps on the calf of Aissa Mandi, studs first from behind, no contact with the ball. More often than not, it would be a straight red. Yet there's nothing, not even a VAR check. The match moves on, Messi scores all 3 in a 3-0 win. Next game against Austria, there's a clear foul from McAllister in the build-up to the opening goal. Not the most egregious infraction, but no VAR check despite clear requests, which would become especially interesting later in the tournament. For the dead rubber against Jordan, there's some controversy about a possible handball by Lo Celso, but who cares? We got bigger fish to fry. So, in the round of 32 versus Cape Verde, no major outstanding controversies, but constant bias towards Argentina. By extra time, Enzo could literally throw himself on the floor with no one remotely close, and a foul would be given. I guess sometimes it's easier to steer a game inch by inch than to make one blatant wrong decision. However, that did not stop them against Egypt. Remember when I said the VAR refused to go back to cancel Argentina's goal against Austria? Well, VAR was willing to rewind the tape all the way back to a play on the other side of the pitch to cancel Egypt's goal. Now, the first mistake here is that the VAR can only go back to the last moment in which Argentina was in position to defend its goal, meaning when Tagliafico got dribbled by Hassan. As The Athletic wrote, Argentina's collective failure to defend their goal because they allowed Zico to run past them is not part of the decision-making process. And the second mistake is that once Argentina magically came back from being 2-0 behind at the 79th minute, the winning goal came straight after a touch on Mo Salah, this one inside the penalty box. And even then, the referee refused to check VAR, going as far as sending off the Egyptian staff for protesting. I think Mo Salah's face says it all. I'll admit that I do think this call specifically could have gone either way, but the difference in treatment is just glaringly obvious. After all, the referees certainly never had any issues with the Argentinians screaming in their faces. And yet, they weren't done. In the quarters, just as it started to seem like Switzerland might score another and take the win, suddenly, VAR gets called for what seemed like your average foul in the middle of the pitch. Then, they claim it is being called for a case of mistaken identity, something normally only used when the referee shows a card to the wrong teammate by mistake. Yet, despite it clearly not being the case, once the replays do show up, everyone can see it. Paredes should definitely not have gotten a yellow. Embolo had dived. And Embolo already had a yellow card, so Embolo got sent off. But was this done by the book? Yeah, technically. But were they stretching the limits of the rules in such a bizarre and desperate manner that it is hard to believe it wasn't done with the intention of helping Argentina? Also yes. Regardless, by then, with the word rigged trending globally against England in the semis, Enzo settled for the casual punch to the back of the head, which is illegal in the UFC, but apparently not even a yellow for Argentina, even if Enzo keeps on committing foul after foul. So much so that he got scored the equalizer himself, right before Lautaro completed a comeback off of a cross Messi put in, right after stepping on Jet Spence. Yeah, obviously, I don't think every single one of these had to 100% be called against Argentina, but if you're focusing on any specific incident, you're missing the big picture. There are dozens of other small calls that could be brought up. There are literal 1 hour-long compilations of mistakes made in favor of Argentina floating around social media, but even that buzz doesn't really matter. The thing is, if you look at the data, it's obvious. Take all the quarterfinalists and calculate how often VAR would be called in their favor, and Argentina not only leads, they're almost 3 times more likely to get a call in their favor than the average. And when it comes to calls against them, well, unlike every other nation, there simply weren't any, even though they committed the most fouls out of any team in the tournament. Add to that the fact that once again they got the most penalties in their favor out of any team, making it 8 in just 2 World Cups, when the likes of Brazil have only had 13 in their history across 23 tournaments. Plus, the incredibly advantageous draw that not only saw them reach the semi-finals without playing a single nation ranked in the top 20 by FIFA, but also playing every single match up till the final, either at night or in a covered stadium, never really having to deal with the heat like everyone else, and on top of it all, barely having to travel between stadiums during the group stage, eventually making it to the final having traveled only about half the distance Spain had. Yeah, obviously, to instantly cry out that there is a conspiracy is a bit reductive. Referees have always had a tendency to favor the biggest teams in the world, and there is no bigger team than the world champions. Not to mention that no one wants to make the decision that sends Lionel Messi out of possibly his last ever tournament. However, it's hard not to feel like FIFA brought this heat upon themselves when they literally reverted a red card suspension at the request of Donald Trump, which similarly goes for the Argentinian Federation, who just happened to be under investigation from the FBI while all of this happened, literally being exposed by one of the most notorious investigative journalists in the world for their involvement in a money laundering scheme. They just so happened to be running from within the United States. I mean, none of the parties involved have been doing themselves any favors, and to make matters worse, of course, once they got to the final, they ran into a team that perfectly symbolizes everything that is wrong with them. You see, people tend to forget it, but Spain wasn't always the refined tiki-taka machine we know now. There's a reason they're known as La Furia Roja. Many years ago, Spain was seen as a team that relied more on aggression than technique, with their players frequently being labeled as dirty. In fact, back in 2004, the legendary Cesar Luis Menotti, who led Argentina to their first ever World Cup, infamously claimed that Spain will only win once they decide whether they want to be the bull or the bullfighter. Now, not only were these words rather ironic, seeing how Menotti's Argentina became precisely the kind of raging bulls he was criticizing, but also incredibly prophetic, given how Spain proceeded to completely reinvent themselves, becoming a team that takes control of games like no other, and thanks to that, establishing the greatest serial winning dynasty we've seen in decades. You know, when Aragonés and Del Bosque won 3 tournaments back to back to back, it was easy to discount their work due to the sheer amount of talent within that squad. Even when De La Fuente won the Euro, some could argue that it was in great part thanks to the emergence of Lamine Yamal or the incredible form of Rodri. But this time, well, De La Fuente had to get it done with a Yamal who had not played for Barcelona for 3 months, and a Rodri that was still recovering from an ACL injury. Not to mention that their good luck charm Merino was coming off a surgery, and Nico Williams had been struggling with recurrent injuries all year. Most managers would have panicked and made rash decisions, but not De La Fuente. This man's entire career has been a love letter to Spanish football, and so, naturally, he trusted his players and protected them. Even publicly backing Unai Simon to keep his place as a starter, no matter how incredible David Raya or Joan Garcia had become. It took guts, but he based every decision on the core belief that what wins you games are not the names on the team sheet, but the bond between them. And no matter how rough things got, both he and his players never, ever let go of that philosophy. Right from the opening game, Spain were put under the press's microscope. 74% possession, 27 shots and 0 goals against World Cup first-timers Cape Verde. After that, the newspapers back home read more like obituaries than match reports. Historic letdown, huge shock. Suddenly, everyone wanted changes. But, as Nico Williams said, it's better to just keep our mouths shut, like we did at the Euros. Nobody gave us a chance then, and people talked, but in the end, I gave the winner's medal to my mother. And that's exactly what they did. They shut out the background noise, refused to fit into the media's narrative, and kept going. Even after a 4-0 win over Saudi Arabia, there'd be complaints. Ferran Torres was repeatedly berated for missing chances, even being mocked after he was caught on video during a VAR check, saying to himself, "Please, let it be a goal," only for it to be disallowed. Yet, none of that affected De La Fuente's judgment. And the same way he kept on playing Ferran despite the low moment he was going through, he also trusted Alex Baena to fill in for Nico no matter how difficult of a season he was coming off of, and almost instantly watched them secure the goal that clutched their first place finish within their group. So soon, as Spain's team rolled Austria 3-0, securing the biggest win out of the round of 32, the media's narrative began to change. However, even as everyone rejoiced over their goal fest, with fans nicknaming Oyarzabal as Oyar Haaland, their most impressive achievement went under the radar. Sure, it was very in line with their philosophy that while Yamal drew the cameras towards them with his diamond-encrusted Batman-themed chain, it was the understated Oyarzabal who collected 5 goal contributions in 4 games to put his name at the top of every stats table. However, they were not concerned about flashy scorelines. In fact, this was the first time they won an elimination round by more than a goal since 1994. Even when they became world champions in 2010, they did so by winning each and every game by 1-0. And if there was any indication that they might repeat that, it was that Unai Simon had now broken Casillas' national team record for the most minutes without conceding at a World Cup. Which was especially remarkable given that across those last 4 games, he'd only been forced to make 4 saves. That's it. While everyone doubted them, De La Fuente had fine-tuned his machine. Already then, they were frustrating their opponents, absorbing all the possession and leaving them with nothing to play off of. And so, with Portugal and Belgium both completely suffocated over the next rounds, not only had Unai Simon already broken Walter Zenga's all-time record, but even as he finally conceded, another of De La Fuente's men, Mikel Merino, paid back for the vote of confidence, showing up to both games with little more than 10 minutes on the clock and securing both winning goals to put them in the semis. It truly seemed De La Fuente simply could not make a bad decision. Even dropping Pedri, one of the best midfielders on the planet, paid off almost immediately, with Fabian Ruiz grabbing a goal within 30 minutes and not letting go of his spot for the rest of the tournament. And though Spain surely were lucky to see the likes of Nuno Mendes, Tillmans, Courtois and soon Saliba all go out injured, while everyone looked for excuses to justify how Spain had made it so far while conceding half as many chances as anyone else in the tournament, bashing Yamal for claiming that if anyone should be afraid, it should be France. It turned out he was far from overconfident. Going up against Spain, the most stacked national team on the planet could not have looked more toothless, any more desperate. With Yamal slowly getting back to his best, Lucas Digne had a nightmare of a match, conceding a penalty and gifting Spain the opener just 22 minutes in. While, on the other hand, Rodri and Fabian controlled the midfield with such discipline that Olise was reduced to a bystander, completely detached from Dembele or Mbappe. By half-time, Deschamps was so lost he actually subbed off Rabiot, who was yet to miss a single minute in the tournament. However, no subs could help, not Cherki, not Barcola or even Doué, and with Pedro Porro validating yet another of De La Fuente's bets, scoring their second and taking man of the match, now only Argentina remained. And in their run to the final, they had not played a single match that could prepare them for an opponent like this. If France were mocked for taking 81 minutes before they could even get a shot on target, Argentina were hopeless. A full 90 without even attempting a shot. Spain had them in a state of hypnosis, completely at their mercy, had it not been for Emi Martinez racking up 10 saves and Tagliafico, McAllister, Paredes and Romero going unpunished all game no matter what stunts they pulled. who knows what kind of historic result we could have seen. Regardless, it didn't matter, because then Enzo made sure to pull off the kind of acrobatic foul that even a blind man could see, and even if Otamendi managed to delay Spain's winner by flopping around, it then came in the most poetic fashion, straight from the man who had been wishing for his goal since the start of the tournament. As always, De La Fuente trusted Ferran and reaped the rewards, meaning, in the end, no matter how much Argentina's shenanigans pulled the focus away from this great team, what they've done is tremendous. 38 games unbeaten, the record for a national team, only 1 goal conceded all tournament, sweeping every single award. To which, I must say, I'm forever grateful to Unai Simon for saving me from having to watch Emi Martinez hump the Golden Glove a second time.